This is Father Jude, and this video is about the story of creation in Genesis chapter 2. So, this is basically the second creation account that we can find in the Bible. And before we actually reflect on Genesis chapter 2, we first have to read the actual text, the whole text of Genesis chapter 2. And so we begin reading. In the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, when no plant of the field was yet in the earth, and no herb of the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. But a mist went up from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. Then the Lord God formed man of dust from the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. And the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground the Lord God made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and there it divided and became 4 rivers. The name of the first is Pishon. It is the one which flows around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone are there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one which flows around the whole land of Cush. And the name of the third river is Tigris, which flows east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, You may freely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall die. Then the Lord God said, It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. So out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all cattle, and to the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for the man there was not found a helper fit for him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man he made into a woman, and brought her to the man. Then the man said, This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother, and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked, and were not ashamed. So that is Genesis chapter 2, and for our reflection, we shall first give some of our observations on Genesis chapter 2. Now, our observation is actually in comparison to the first creation account in Genesis chapter 1. So, ikumpara natin yung Genesis chapter 1 and then Genesis chapter 2 in terms of our observation. Now, in Genesis chapter 2, itong ating bagong binasa, in Genesis chapter 2, we observe that man was created first before other creatures. Nilikha ng Diyos ang tao una sa lahat. And in comparison to Genesis chapter 1, the man was created last, meaning God created everything even before He created the human person. And this time in Genesis chapter 2, ibang-iba, baliktad. Dahil God created man first, even before creating other creatures. So that after God created man, God provided man with the vegetation for food. Meaning, God created man and He provided for man. Ibig sabihin, God provided everything for the survival of man. After He created man, He provided everything for food so that man, whom God created, may survive. Now, Genesis 1 was like magic. If you remember, in Genesis chapter 1, God said the word, "Let there be," and there was. Remember the repetitive words and phrases, yung mga paulit-ulit na mga salita at mga pangungusap, "Let there be," and there was. Imagine, 6 days na gano'n, no? Let there be, and there was. And God said, "Good," no? Now, in chapter 2, in Genesis chapter 2, wala nang paulit-ulit na mga salita. Okay? Sinabi ko nga in Genesis chapter 1, parang magic, na parang nag-abracadabra ang Diyos. Let there be, and there was. In Genesis chapter 2, okay, we observe that God actually delicately formed man like a potter. Para siyang gumagawa ng paso, gumagawa ng pot. God delicately formed, molded man in His own hands. This is a very good imagery. This is a very good imagery when we, especially when we have difficulty understanding who we are, understanding our worth. Para magandang mag-reflect on Genesis chapter 2, huwag mong isipin walang halaga ang buhay mo dahil hinawakan ka ng Diyos, ginawa ka ng Diyos sa pamamagitan ng kanyang mga kamay. Ibig sabihin, God thought of creating you. God, lahat ng kurba sa katawan mo, lahat ng kurba sa iyong pagkatao ay alam na alam ng Diyos dahil mismong kamay ng Diyos ang gumawa sa iyo. Now, another point for reflection is this. Hindi ka lang basta hinawakan ng Diyos nung siya ay lumikha sa iyo. God actually dirtied Himself. Ibig sabihin, dinumihan ng Diyos. Somehow, no? Dinumihan ng Diyos ang kanyang kamay because He got dust from the earth, from the soil, and formed it to create the human person. So, you can imagine God delicately creating, as it were, the human person. But not only that, God actually dirtied Himself in order to create you, to create man, to create the human person. Now, next point for our reflection is this. Man is from dust. Man is from soil. Man is from dirt. Now, if we look at this, ano ba ang lupa? Ano ba ang alikabok? Hindi ba't inaapak-apakan lang natin ang alikabok? Hindi ba't winawalis lang natin, pinapagpag lang natin ang alikabok? So, kung titingnan natin, ginawa tayo from alabok, from alikabok, from soil, from dust. Dirty, ordinary, fragile, worthless. Imagine, nilikha ka mula sa dirt, mula sa alikabok. Ano ang worth mo, ano ang halaga mo, nanggaling ka lang naman pala sa putik, nanggaling ka lang naman pala sa alikabok. Okay? So our question, at least for this point, no, which is a very important point, you are from dust, you are from soil, you are from dirt. Ano ang iyong halaga? What is your worth? Kung ang ating understanding, ang alikabok ay inaapakan lang, pinapagpag, winawalis lang, aba, wala ka talagang worth. Pero, in Genesis chapter 2, worthless man kung titingnan ang dust, worthless man kung titingnan ang maduming soil. Pero, ito yung pinakamahalaga sa lahat. God breathed into man the breath of life. Parang napakagandang mag-reflect. kung ang tingin mo sa iyong sarili ay dust lamang, kung ang tingin mo sa iyong sarili ay worthless, walang halaga dahil nga ikaw ay nanggaling lang sa alikabok, wag mong pigilan o wag kang tumigil doon. Huwag kang tumigil doon sa katotohanan na yun na ikaw ay worthless dahil ikaw ay nanggaling sa alabok. Because you are actually priceless because God breathed into you His own breath. Therefore, man became a living being because of God's breath. Okay? Man is alive because of the life of God in man. Uulitin ko yon. Man is alive because the life of God is in man. Nabuhay or buhay ang tao dahil ang mismong hininga, ang mismong buhay ng Diyos ay nasa tao. Hindi ba't napakagandang mag-reflect sa puntong ito? Ikaw ay worthless at nagkaroon ka ng worth na sobrang mahalagang worth dahil nga ang Diyos mismo ang nagbigay sa iyo ng kanyang mismong hininga. Man became a living being because of God's breath. That's why man is breathing, as it were, breathing life because of the life of God in man. Now, if we continue, man is actually breathing the breath of God. Habang ikaw ay nabubuhay, habang ikaw ay nasa mundong ibabaw at humihinga, isipin mo na ang iyong hininga ay mismong hininga ng Diyos. Again, napaka-brilliant ng mga nagsulat ng second creation account. From worthless soil, from worthless dust, nagkaroon ng sobra-sobrang worth, nagkaroon ng sobra-sobrang halaga dahil ang Diyos mismo ang nagbigay ng kanyang hininga, ng kanyang buhay sa kanyang ginawa. So that, sasabihin natin, man is from dust, from soil, from dirt. Yes, that is true. But is it true that we are worthless if we came from dust, if we were created from soil or dirt? Is it true that we are worthless? Actually, no. We are not worthless. We are actually priceless. Priceless because man breathes the breath of God. We are priceless. Napakahalaga natin dahil ang ating hininga ay hininga ng Diyos. Ang buhay natin ay mismong buhay o nanggaling sa buhay ng Diyos. So that, what is the point of this presentation? What is the point of Genesis chapter 2? The point of Genesis chapter 2 is this. We may seem to be worthless because we are from dust. Kaya nga sabi ko, huwag tayong tumigil doon sa katotohanan na yun. Tayo ay lupa, tayo ay mula sa alabok, at huwag nating isipin na tayo ay worthless lang. Meron tayong halaga, priceless tayo because God breathed into us His own breath. So that our dignity, the dignity of the human person, is rooted on the fact that man breathes and is alive because of the breath of God. Again, ang dignidad ng tao ay nakaugat sa katotohanan na ang tao ay humihinga at buhay na buhay dahil sa hininga ng Diyos, dahil sa mismong buhay ng Diyos na kanyang ibinigay sa atin. Again, if that point should be kept in our hearts, in our minds, our dignity, our worth, our halaga, our dignity is rooted on the fact that we are actually breathing and we are actually alive because the breath of God is in us, the life of God is in us. Now, so the fact is that you are breathing the breath of God. Or magandang tanungin ang sarili, do you actually continue to breathe the breath of God? Baka naman ang iyong hininga ay laging galit. Okay? Again, this is for our reflection. nasa atin ang hininga ng Diyos. We are alive precisely because of the breath of God. The life of God is in us. Are we still breathing the breath of God? Or are we breathing anger or hatred? Are we breathing maybe envy? Are we breathing in and out jealousy or anxiety or fear, disappointment, grief, sadness, etc., etc.? So the question for us is this: what is it that you are breathing? Ano ba ang hinihinga mo? Kung sa Ilonggo pa imbis nga maginhawa ikaw yan nagapusnga. Alright? So, ibig sabihin, ang tanong, ano ba ang iyong hinihinga? Hinihinga mo pa rin ba ang hininga ng Diyos o baka kung ano-ano na ang iyong hinihinga sa ngayon? So I would like all of us to reflect on that. God breathed into us so that we are priceless. Our dignity lies on that fact. Okay, rests on the fact that we are created by God from dust, it's true, but we are priceless in the eyes of God because we are breathing His own breath, the breath of God. Alright? So, God created you delicately like a potter and provided for you. Okay? That is what Genesis chapter 2 is telling us. God created us delicately, parang magpapaso. Okay? Ibig sabihin, mismong kamay ng Diyos ang gumawa sa atin. At katulad ng gumagawa ng gumagawa ng paso, ay kailangan maingat na paggawa dahil baka ikaw ay mabasag, baka ang paso ay hindi maayos ang forma. Kaya God actually created you delicately. Masyadong nag-ingat ang Diyos sa paggawa sa iyo like a real potter. And not only that, God provided for you. God provided vegetation, God provided sustenance, no? God provided everything for your sustenance. Now, but not only that, or because of that, you are actually God's masterpiece because God carefully molded you in His hands like a potter. Magandang mag-reflect dyan, no? We are God's masterpieces because God carefully molded us in His hands like a potter. You are a masterpiece which came to life only because God breathed into you His own breath. Tayo ay mga masterpieces na hindi lang parang painting na isasabit sa dingding. Hindi lang para pang display na walang buhay. Tayo ay mga masterpieces ng Diyos because God created us by His own hands, and not only that, God breathed into us so that we are His masterpieces that are alive because we continue to breathe His own life. Now, if we look closely, mas magandang mag-reflect at isipin ito. Ang ibig sabihin ng Genesis chapter 2, utang natin sa Diyos ang ating buhay. Hindi ka hihinga, wala kang hinga, o wala kang hininga, wala kang buhay kung hindi dahil sa hininga ng Diyos na Kanyang ibinigay sa iyo. So that the least that we can do is to thank and worship God who is the source of our life. Nilikha ka ng Diyos sa Kanyang mga kamay, binigyan ka pa ng lahat ng bagay para ikaw ay masustain sa buhay, at binigyan ka pa ng Kanyang mismong hininga upang ikaw ay patuloy na magiging buhay na buhay. So that you are alive because God is in you. Magpasalamat dahil buhay ka, dahil nandyan ang Diyos sa iyo. At ang invitation para sa atin, sana hindi kung ano-ano ang ating mga hinihinga. Tani hindi lang kung ano ang atong ginapusnga adlaw-adlaw. The invitation for us, according to what we have read in Genesis chapter 2, that we continue to breathe in and out the breath of God. I hope this video helps. especially as we reflect on our worth, especially on we reflect on our dignity, on our importance. Thank you very much. God bless you all.